Imagine you are standing in the middle of a megacity. Pick any skyline, New York, Dubai, Shanghai. You look up, and there's a skyscraper halfway finished. It's a hive of activity. You can see the cranes swinging, sparks flying, concrete pumping up 50 stories. It looks like a marvel of engineering, right? It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's majestic. But I want you to strip away the steel and the glass for a second. What is actually holding that project up?
Gravity.
Well, yes, physics is doing its part. But I'm talking about the invisible structure, the thing that stops the whole project from collapsing the moment a crane falls over, or a fire breaks out, or a wall cracks. We're talking about money, specifically the contract clauses that guarantee that money is actually there when reality hits the fan.
Ah, you mean the difference between a tragic accident and a total financial apocalypse? Exactly. Today, we are not looking at blueprints. We are doing a deep dive into the FIDC Red Book, specifically Clause 19. This is the section entirely dedicated to insurance. And before you tune out thinking insurance is boring, let me tell you, reading through the source material, it felt less like administrative paperwork and more like the rules for high-stakes poker.
It really is. In the construction world, Clause 19 is the ultimate safety net. It's the mechanism that decides who pays, who is covered, and maybe most importantly, who is left holding the bag if the paperwork isn't done right.
And honestly, reading through these requirements, I just felt this profound sense of relief that I am not a construction contractor. The sheer amount of liability here is intense. It feels like navigating a minefield.
It can certainly feel that way, but I tend to view Clause 19 a bit differently. It's not just bureaucracy, it's a shield. Without these clauses, a single accident could halt $1 billion project and leave it rotting as a half-finished skeleton. This clause ensures there's money to fix the mess so the work can continue. So let's unpack this shield. The first thing that struck me in subclause 19.1, the general requirements, is the power dynamic. It says the contractor shall effect and maintain the insurance. So you build it, you insure it, the contractor's doing the shopping, right?
Correct. The contractor is the one who has to go to the market, find the insurers, and pay the premiums. However, and this is a really critical distinction in the source text, they don't have free rein. The clause explicitly states that the terms of that insurance shall be subject to consent by the employer.
That's the mother may I part I noticed. So why does the employer get a veto? If the contractor is paying for it, shouldn't they get to pick the policy?
Well, think about the incentives. If I'm a cash-strapped contractor, I might be tempted to buy the cheapest, patchiest insurance policy available, just to tick the box.
Sure, something with a massive deductible or huge exclusions.
Exactly, just to save a few bucks on the premium. But if the building burns down and the insurer refuses to pay because of some fine print exclusion, who loses?
The employer. It's their building.
Right. The employer is the one left with a pile of ash and no money to rebuild it. So FIDC builds in this check and balance. The employer has to agree that the insurance is actually good enough. And it usually has to match whatever was agreed in the letter of acceptance before the contract was even signed.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's a scenario I found pretty dramatic. What if the contractor is strapped for cash, they're juggling payments, and they just, stop paying the insurance premium, the policy lapses, then, boom, disaster strikes. Is the project just dead in the water?
That is the nightmare scenario. And to prevent that, Clause 19.1 has a step-in right. It's one of my favorite mechanisms in these contracts because it's just pure self-preservation. It says if the contractor fails to pay the premium, the employer can step in and pay it directly to the insurer.
So the employer pays it for them, out of the goodness of their heart.
Definitely not. No, they pay it to keep the shield up. But then, and here's the kicker, they immediately turn around and recover that money from the contractor. They can deduct it directly from the next payment certificate, effectively dipping into the contractor's paycheck, or just claim it as a debt.
It's like a landlord paying your renter's insurance because they know you're broke and then taking it out of your security deposit.
It's exactly that.
But that assumes the employer even knows the premium wasn't paid. How do they find out? Do they have to wait for a cancellation letter?
No, and this is what I call the snitch mechanism, or maybe the receipt rule. The clause says the contractor has to prove they're insured. Whenever the employer asks, they have to produce the policies. And more specifically, as each premium is paid, the contractor has to promptly submit a copy of the receipt or a confirmation from the insurer.
So you can't just say the check is in the mail.
Not at all. You have to show the receipt every single time. It ensures transparency. There is no hiding that coverage has lapsed. If you miss a payment, the employer knows immediately and can trigger that step-in right.
There's another interesting bit in 19.1 about shared liability. It says if there's a loss, it's borne by each party in proportion to each party's liability, which sounds fair. We split the bill based on who messed up, but then there's a twist.
A vital nuance. Generally, if we are both at fault, we split the bill. But if the insurance doesn't pay out because you messed up the paperwork, say the contractor failed to notify the insurer about a change in the scope of work or stored explosives on site without telling anyone, then the defaulting party bears the loss.
So if I break the rules of the insurance policy, and because of that the insurer denies the claim, I have to pay for the whole thing myself, even if the accident wasn't entirely my fault.
Correct. You lose the safety net because you cut the ropes. If your administrative failure kills the coverage, you pay for the loss of that coverage.
That is heavy. Okay, let's move to the meat of it. Subclause 19.2.1, which covers the works. This is the insurance for the building itself. And right off the bat, there's a phrase that seems to do a lot of legal heavy lifting: joint names.
Oh, it's a huge concept. The insurance must be in the joint names of the contractor and the employer. This isn't just the contractor insuring themselves.
They're the same boat?
Exactly. It means the insurer treats them as a single, combined entity in many respects.
And why does that matter so much?
Well, think about subrogation. It's a fancy legal term where an insurer pays a claim and then steps into the shoes of the victim to sue the person who caused the damage to get their money back.
Okay.
If the policy wasn't in joint names, the insurer could pay the employer for a fire and then turn around and sue the contractor for starting it.
Which would bankrupt the contractor and kill the project.
Precisely. But if they are both the insured, you generally can't sue your own insured. So joint names stops the insurance company from tearing the project team apart with lawsuits after a payout.
That is a fascinating bit of legal gymnastics. It forces everyone to stay on the same side.
Yeah.
Now, looking at what is covered, it's the works, the contractor's documents, and materials and plant. So the building, the blueprints, and the bulldozers. But did you catch the valuation rule?
The 15% rule.
Yes. This surprised me. It says the insurance has to cover the full replacement value plus an additional 15%. Why the extra markup? Is that a tip?
Not quite a tip. Think about what happens after a disaster. If a half-built hotel collapses, you don't just start building again instantly. You have to demolish the ruins. You have to haul away thousands of tons of debris. You have to hire engineers to figure out what happened and redesign the fix.
And inflation, right. The price of materials might have gone up since you started.
Exactly. That extra 15%, unless a different amount is specified, covers those incidental costs.
Right.
Professional fees, demolition, debris removal. It ensures you actually have enough money to get back to the starting line. It's expensive to clean up a mess.
And the timeline is important here, too.
Mm-hmm.
You're covered from the commencement date until the taking over certificate. So from day one until you hand over the keys.
But it doesn't fully stop there, does it?
No, it trolls off. The source mentions it continues partially during the defects period.
Right. It covers any damage caused by the contractor while they're coming back to fix defects or finish outstanding work. So if you come back 3 months later to fix a leaky window and accidentally set the curtains on fire, you are still covered.
Speaking of defects, this is where it got really interesting for me. I struggled with this part of 19.2.1, the exclusion in paragraph.
Yeah.
It feels like a paradox. It says the insurance excludes the cost of a defective part, but includes the damage to other parts caused by that defect.
This is the classic defect versus consequence distinction. It is notoriously tricky, and it trips up a lot of people. Let's use an analogy.
Nice.
Imagine you're the contractor, and you're installing a high-pressure water pipe on the 10th floor, but you weld the joint poorly. That's a defect. A week later, the pipe bursts, and water floods 3 floors of the building.
Okay, disaster scenario.
Yeah.
Water everywhere.
Right. It ruins the drywall, the carpets, the wiring. Now, under this clause, the insurance company looks at the claim. They see the pipe burst because of your bad weld.
Yeah.
They will say, "We are not paying for the pipe."
Because I built it wrong.
Exactly. You, the contractor, have to buy a new pipe and install it correctly on your own dime. The insurance is not a warranty for bad work. If it paid for that, you'd have no incentive to do it right the first time.
Right.
However, the insurance will pay for the water-damaged drywall, the carpets, the wiring. Those parts weren't defective. They were damaged as a consequence of the defect.
That is a crucial distinction. So you pay for your mistake, the bad pipe, but the insurance pays for the havoc your mistake caused to everything else.
Precisely. It's a very fine line, but it's a multi-million-dollar one. If a massive structural column fails because of bad concrete and brings down a whole slab, insurance pays for the slab, but not the cost of replacing that one specific bad column.
That clarifies it perfectly.
Right.
It's surprisingly fair. It keeps the contractor on the hook for quality, but protects the project from catastrophe.
And that's the so what for me. It forces the contractor to maintain quality.
Okay, let's pivot. We've covered the building. What about stuff that hasn't arisen yet? Subclause 19.2.2 talks about goods.
This is straightforward but necessary. It covers goods and equipment from the moment they're delivered to the site until they're no longer needed. It just fills that gap. If a truck drops a load of steel beams at the gate and they get stolen overnight, they are covered.
Simple enough. But then we get to subclause 19.2.3 and the tone changes. Liability for breach of professional duty. This sounds like we are moving away from physical bricks and into the realm of the brain.
We are. This clause applies if the contractor is responsible for any design. In a traditional contract, the employer provides the design. But in modern contracts, the contractor often does some of it, maybe the HVAC system or the cladding.
And if they do, they must carry professional indemnity insurance.
Yes. This covers acts, errors, or omissions in the design. But look closely at the standard required. The insurance has to indemnify the contractor against liability, resulting in the works not being fit for the purpose intended.
Fit for purpose. That sounds like a standard legal phrase, but you're saying it carries a lot of weight.
Immense weight. Fit for purpose is one of the highest standards in construction law. It's much stricter than reasonable skill and care, which is what a doctor or a lawyer is usually held to.
How so?
Reasonable skill means I did my best and I followed the rules. Fit for purpose is an absolute obligation. It means, does this thing actually do the job it was supposed to do? If you design a roof and it collapses under expected snow loads, it wasn't fit for purpose. It doesn't matter how hard you tried.
So this insurance protects the contractor if their brain work fails, not just their handiwork.
Exactly. And because the liability is so strict, this insurance is absolutely critical.
So we've got the building, the goods, and the design. Now, what about the rest of the world? Subclause 19.2.4 covers injury to persons and damage to property.
This is third-party liability. We're talking about the neighbors, passersby, property that isn't part of the site. If a crane swings too wide and smashes the roof of the house next door, this is the policy that responds.
And there's another term here that jumped out at me, the cross-liability clause. We talked about joint names earlier, where they are in the same boat. But this clause says the insurance shall apply to the contractor and employer as separate insureds.
I know, it sounds contradictory. First we join them, now we separate them. But this is vital for avoiding messy legal battles.
So why do we need to treat them as separate?
It creates a legal fiction. It tells the insurance company to pretend that the contractor and employer have completely separate policies. Let's imagine a scenario.
Okay, lay it on me.
Imagine the contractor accidentally drives a bulldozer into the employer's existing office building, a building that's next to the site but not part of the works.
Oops.
Big oops. Now, technically, they're both the insured, and usually you can't sue yourself. The insurer would say, employer, contractor, you're the same person to us, we don't pay for this.
Which leaves the employer paying for it themselves or having to sue the contractor personally.
Right. But the cross-liability clause solves this. It allows the employer to claim against the insurance for the damage the contractor caused, almost as if the contractor were a totally random third party.
That is incredibly clever. It keeps them from having to sue each other. They just turn to the insurer.
Exactly. It keeps the project relationships intact by offloading the conflict to the insurance company.
Yeah.
It stops the project from stalling.
Okay, moving on to the people actually building the thing. Subclause 19.2.5, injury to employees.
This is your standard workers' compensation requirement. The contractor has to insure their own staff. And importantly, the contractor is the parent here. They are responsible for making sure all their subcontractors do the same.
So if a subby slips through the cracks, the main contractor is on the hook.
Precisely.
There's a little indemnity exception here, too. It says the policy indemnifies the employer, except to the extent that they arise from any act or neglect of the employer.
Right. Fair is fair. The contractor insures the workers against construction risks. But if the employer comes onto the site and negligently drives a car into a group of workers, the contractor's insurance isn't going to cover the employer for that. Everyone is responsible for their own negligence.
And finally, we have subclause 19.2.6, other insurances required by laws. This feels like the catch-all don't break the local law clause.
It is. FUI is used globally. Vietnam, Brazil, Dubai, every country has different rules. Some require mandatory flood insurance or specific vehicle insurance. This clause just reminds the contractor that FUI isn't the only rule book.
And at whose cost?
The contractor's own cost. It's explicitly stated.
So when we step back and look at Clause 19 as a whole, it really is a layered system. You have the joint names policy for the building, professional indemnity for the design, third party for the neighbors, and insurance for the workers. It feels like they've tried to plug every possible hole where money could leak out.
That is the goal. Construction is high-stakes gambling with physics and finance. Clause 19 turns that gamble into a calculated risk. The provisions we talked about, especially joint names and cross-liability, are designed to keep the employer and contractor on the same side of the table. Instead of destroying each other with lawsuits, they both look to the insurer to fund the recovery.
It effectively depersonalizes the disaster. It's not, you broke my building, it's, we have a claim to file.
Precisely, it allows the project to survive the accident.
But it does leave me thinking about that exclusion we discussed, the defect paradox. The pipe. Insurance covers the damage caused by the mistake, but not the mistake itself.
It's a pretty profound concept when you stop and think about it.
It really is.
Yeah.
It suggests that in the world of high-stakes construction, you can be protected from bad luck, you can be protected from fire, flood, and theft. But you cannot be protected from your own incompetence.
That's right.
If you build it wrong, you still have to build it again. Insurance cleans up the mess, but it doesn't fix the flaw.
That's the bottom line. It maintains the moral hazard. If insurance fixed the defect too, nobody would care about quality. This way, the pressure's still on to build it right.
Well, next time you walk past a construction site and see those cranes towering over the city, don't just look at the steel and glass. Think about the invisible web of contracts, premiums, and liability clauses wrapping that entire building, holding it up just as much as the concrete is.
It is the safety net that makes the skyline possible. Without Clause 19, no bank would lend the money, and no contractor would take the risk.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fine print of the FIDI Red Book. It turns out insurance clauses are actually pretty exciting when you realize what's at stake.
Always a pleasure to decode it with you.
We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.